and welcome to episode 227 of our SAP on Azure video podcast. Today is February 5th, and together with Robert and Goran, we're here to talk about anything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So in the past, we talked a lot about OData services. However, RFC communication is still used by many customers. While RFC provides a seamless and efficient integration to your SAP system, it is by default not secure. That's where SNC, the secure network communication, comes in. But how do you set it up? How do you get started? Martin Pankraz recently published a blog post that outlines the required steps so that you can use RFC via SNC in your Power Platform Logic apps or in Microsoft Fabric. So welcome, Martin. Before we take a look at your blog post, maybe again you can quickly introduce yourself.
Yeah, my pleasure. Martin Pankraz, product manager and Azure Core at Microsoft, team member of Holger's realm in Microsoft also. Yeah. And our core work is really working together with SAP as our engineering partner when we develop stuff together. A prominent one that I did in the past and still do is the SAP Private Link, which connects Business Technology Platform with Azure services via the Microsoft backbone, but also with internal Microsoft product groups that interface with the workload. And this is like the core of the thing that we will look at today, where the Azure integration services, other M365 products need to call or need to be able to call RFCs securely. Customers are demanding zero trust. We talk about zero trust all the time, yeah? Which means every single connection should be protected with the highest barrier possible. Yeah? And that's why SNC is still the industry standard, so to say, for RFC connections.
Right. Yeah. And as you said, I mean, in most of my scenarios, I'm just using a simple RFC because when I test, when I do demos, when I validate the first things, I just use RFC, fully knowing obviously that it is not secure, and it's actually sometimes really scary when you open up a Wireshark or another network watcher, and then you can really see that everything via RFC is not encrypted. So you can really look at everything that is transmitted. And obviously in a productive environment, as you said, in zero trust, that's not what you want to do. You want to, similar like in the browser. In the browser, I think now everyone understood you need to have HTTPS. So as the secure layer basically. But with RFC, I think the issue is still it's somewhat hidden. You don't care so much, or you don't know, but actually you need to make this also secure. And I think that's where lots of blogs have been published, but I really liked again your updated blog to make it very concrete, to put it in the context obviously of some of the Microsoft integrations. As mentioned, when we're using this in the Power Platform or in Logic apps, that's a very, very common theme, but also obviously in other areas. So I thought it was a very, very interesting blog to refresh everyone and to also provide some nice guidance on how to set up an SNC.
Agreed, yeah, that was also one of the reasons why we decided to publish something like this. We had a product group newly asking about this because they were adding this feature based on customer demand, and they had problems with it. So. And then I was checking, okay, what's there? Do we need to compile multiple things? Is it in one place? Is it something we can reference from the Microsoft Docs, which then really closes the gap that we're seeing with customers or internal engineering even wants to run integration tests, etc. You know? And at the last conference that I attended, the Connected in Berlin, that's run by our partner Kubik, we had actually some Azure MVPs debating security in some of the services towards SAP also. Yeah? And they were saying, well, I come from a time where the anonymous access to the service was the standard. Yeah? No one cared about securing this communication channel because it's your network. Yeah? The systems sit next to each other. Why do we care? Yeah? Anonymous is the thing we do. Yeah? But they also they agreed that maybe times have changed, and but they were saying this is not their primary thing. Yeah? They grew up just connecting things, not caring about username, password was like the highest thing. Yeah. Yeah.
You don't need more security.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
no,
Yeah.
and then as you said, if you then start to look at, well, how can I actually secure it? Then sometimes it's overwhelming. You have bits and pieces here and there and there, and that's what I like again about your blog post. It's very concrete, it's very specific. It guides you end to end through all the steps. I mean, you also have some additional references in the blog post, obviously, but I can basically just follow the steps and then I can set up SNC in my environment and use it in Purview or in yeah, wherever other Microsoft applications.
Exactly. Yeah. Because this is a topic that has been debated for, I think, the last 30 years or something. Yeah. And there's many materials available, but it's not comprehensive in one place. Yeah. I'm still calling out other blogs, and also making sure that the community grows. Yeah, we should build on top of each other rather than reproduce always the same stuff again. Yeah. But I wanted to make sure that really the command sequences for this specialized CLI tool is in one place, so that for the happy path, yeah, everyone can start new with this and really get one flow going. Yeah, it doesn't discuss all the certificates
Of
aspects.
course, yeah.
You can, but at least you have one guide that really goes end to end, and then you can branch out for more comprehensive things where you need to.
That's what I really love. Perfect. So let's maybe take, yeah, perfect. Yeah, there we are.
This is the blog post that will be in the show notes, right, on the YouTube session. And this is also why we called it Getting Started, because it's not the enterprise grade S500 running this for 500 systems with one single command library, but at least giving you the toolbox required to get this going, yeah, when you start with your first SNC configuration. And I'm calling out also the differences to principal propagation, because in here we were focusing on system-to-system communication. And when you start Googling SNC, you also get hit very often with principal propagation configurations. But there it's really about mapping arbitrary many users to arbitrary many on the SAP side, yeah? And not a single technical one-to-one connection. Now, that's like one factor that you need to consider when you look at the different sources for this.
And I think it's also really about encryption, the traffic. So yes, the technical authentication, but also encrypting the traffic.
For sure, yes. I was referring to the certificate mapping aspect of it, yes, but you're right. Of course, the primary reason why we're doing this is secure network communications, encrypting the traffic and the communication between them. Yes, and here we have a diagram that flows from right to left, where you have your consumers. Those are the ones where the customers are demanding SNC capabilities. And we strive to have every Microsoft service be able to use it for whatever SAP target that supports SNC. And in here, then you have to deal with multiple options. Either there's a UI component in Azure, for instance, when we look at Data Factory, when you create an SAP table service to talk to or to use in your data pipelines, you already have something like this UI part where you can switch SNC mode on. And then comes the question, okay, what's the SNC name? What's the partner name? What's library path? Why is there quality of protections? What does this mean? And why is there still username and password? I thought I'm using SNC.
Yeah.
And this is where one way of where this gets exposed to you. But it could also be just the Java connectivity library or the .NET connectivity library, JCO and ENCO, which also support this. And you will find as a common denominator always this SNC name, the partner name, some reference to actually load the crypto DLL that you need to download from SAP with your S user. And then the various levels of SNC protection. At what point, what do you want to enforce? And then the SAP has documentation that is linked on the blog what each of those drop-down things here mean.
But that's actually really cool that you're showing us how is the end user result or the end user UI or the admin UI that I need to do this. So there are basically two things. First, I need to configure obviously my SAP system so that it is enabled for SNC. But then how do I address this? And exactly like you said, what is the name? What is the partner name and so on? So cool.
Exactly, yeah. And on the backend, there's a couple of transactions on ABAP backends where you configure this initially. That's also called out on the blog post. And I opened here transaction SNC 0. And in here, you already then start maintaining a list of clients. And as I said, one-to-one relationship. And in here, for one of the Microsoft products, I started adding a client and started to say, well, this is RFC activated, SNC connections from this client with this certificate. Please trust them, allow them.
But maybe let's do a step back, because I think before we go there, obviously, we need to, well, we actually need to, as you just briefly mentioned, download the required tools from SAP. So maybe we can take a look at your blog post and just continue to walk through
Yes.
the steps.
I think it starts here at the beginning, where to download. Quickly go in there. There you go. Download the library. You were saying, Goran?
Yeah. I will ask something else. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the crypto library, right? As in one option.
Not the only option. Yeah. Without it, you cannot do SNC. You need to have this crypto library available.
I was meaning, maybe question was, there are those clients library like JCO and .NET Connector. Do you know the .NET Connector? Because I was playing around. I think I was clicking on those links that you put it, and my eyes were still right. They were claiming about the .NET Core support.
Yes.
Do you know, is that kind of finally came into support state?
Well, ENCO released, or SAP released for .NET Core end of last year, but only for Windows machines. So you have the latest .NET capabilities, but like 2 hours later, when the first people started testing and noticed it's not supporting Linux yet, there was already a new influencing request like triggered and shared with SAP right away.
I mean, the reason why I also ask is that .NET Core, it's as a runtime environment, very much present in a different Azure function, left and right, meaning it would make setup much easier. So customer will have much more options now. For example, if they are using a .NET Connector, ENCO.
That's true. The influencing request is there. Maybe we put it also in the show notes, Holger. And everyone watching this, please vote for it, so that we get over the threshold at SAP that we actually can deliver .NET 8 for Linux as well. Customers are asking about it, but not everyone is aware because it's a very specialized feature, and it's a bit hard to collect the votes, even though more people, I'm sure, would actually want it, like you did, Goran. All right. So to get started, you need to be able to get your hands on the crypto library. Since it's a bit hard to search for, I put the name that actually worked for me on the SAP Software Center. And when you have an S user, you can actually go there, search for this, and then you get the download. Once you have downloaded, you also need the SAP car executable to actually extract it. And the command to extract it is here with putting it on this folder. And in there, you have multiple things that you require for the remainder of the setup. And this executable SAP Gen PSE is the most important one. And for this one, having a really good CLI guide on what the commands mean, what the parameters are, that's a bit hard also to collect on the internet. That's why we put it here with really a copyable command sequence that works for you. And in here, you require some folder where you keep everything. In here, there's some environment variables that will be used by your operating system for some of the commands. So this is also very important to set these commands and make them persisted on the OS layer. And this is something that I took from our colleague Taylor Brazelton, who does this for logic apps. He released all the things in the Microsoft On-Premise Data Gateway and had also a nice blog post that is referenced here. And the sequence, for instance, came from his blog. Once you have this, you can start creating certificates, which is the foundation of the whole SNC setup. You have your client machine, you have your SAP system, both need to trust each other, and so you need to generate and then import on both sides. And we start with the client app, which is in our case a self-hosted integration runtime. And when we go back a bit to the drawing, so we're talking about those area here, the reverse and block proxies, where the components that actually do the SNC connection need to be able to trust and be trusted by the SAP side. That's
and for that, you're using OpenSSL in this specific case to create the certificates there.
Yes. Customers may have their own ways of doing it, but OpenSSL is very accepted, well established, and everyone can do it this way. In here, we create like file names that are referenced further down. We have the typical encryption levels, 2048 as the key length, and then you need to deal with some namings. In the Microsoft space, Contoso is the famous demo name for an organization, so that's why we're using it. Once you have your certificate, then you also need to generate the right file output format and the key format. And in here you see there's the signing request, which is like a typical step in the certificate generation process.
And I think then also here the subject name is also something that you really need to take care of, basically, because this is something that we'll use later on as well.
Yes, exactly. For instance, you see here there's the common name SNC, which arguably is maybe a bad name if you have a larger landscape. Maybe you want to come up with different names, but we wanted to have something that is relatable. And you see here there's also the CN is being referenced here and the Contoso object organization name.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you have a certificate, you sign it with your root CA, and then you can move on to actually establish trust. And for this to work, you need a different format. P12 is the target format that you require. You can execute this command sequence in here with the files that you generated before. This is really like you go through it step by step on your machine.
And copy and paste, basically.
Exactly. And then once you have that P12 format, that's the first time where you need to run this special SAP executable, the subgen PSE, to import this P12 container, which has the certificate information, into the personal secure environment, which SAP's products use to retrieve certificates, ask for, have credentials, etc., and interact to actually get the information that is there. So you're storing the certificate in a secure container on the machine, and this is from where we will read, or where the software reads them, the required certificates.
So basically, up until now, everything was not SAP specific. I mean, we just created the certificates, but now we're using an SAP tool to store them in a way that SAP can actually, or the SAP system can actually use these certificates.
Exactly. So at this point, you have like started the journey and started to create the container with the certificates in there. Meaning when we send connections to SAP, we will be providing this generated certificate. So now we need to make sure SAP actually accepts this. And to get started, I started with the conversation, the transactions needed, for instance, SNC wizard, to actually configure the SAP backend to even enable SNC. And I already showed you before this allow list, where you put in certificate clients. You see again, here's this SNC with the organization Contoso. And then famous S-Trust, everything, authentication, authorization, trust is configured from S-Trust. In here you have an SSL client where you need to add the certificate that we generated with OpenSSL before and make it part of your trusted certificate list. There you can see it again. There it is, SNC controls of the last item here. So now we have ABAP trusting our OpenSSL certificate that our self-hosted integration runtime is sending. Now we need to close the loop and download SAP's certificate and import on our site again. So you double click here, download the own certificate, and this is this part over here where it says HE4 and organization Kerberos. And here's again the command to upload the certificate that you just downloaded from SAP into your container on the self-hosted integration runtime VM.
Yep.
So this PSE now contains the certificate that we sent to SAP and the trust certificate to be able to sign and like make the connection complete, so to say. So this is the place where people usually stop, and then the whole thing fails, because you also need to allow your service or the system that is actually trying to talk to the PSE to be allowed to do it. And unfortunately, when you skipped this step, you will see errors that indicate authentication errors. But not to SAP, but actually to this. Because the service is trying to read the certificate to send it on to SAP for SNC. Yes. But it looks a bit, you start looking in different places for the error, but not the actual one. And this is like a mandatory step. And when you use the self-hosted integration runtime, this is the service name on the Windows operating system that will be requesting the certificate. So you need to give to this service authorization. And this
because this service runs the SHIR, the self-hosted integration runtime.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So here's the command where you need to provide the PIN that you provide when you generate the PSE and say this service user is allowed to ask for the certificate. And this is also where the security comes into place. Not every single service that comes from the outside, from the integration runtime, is actually allowed to ask for the certificate and then provide it to the systems downstream. Yeah, this was one of the bigger learnings, how to make sure that the sequence is complete. And then there's other commands to verify what credentials you already have. This is for the troubleshooting section. Which user service do you actually use? Can you verify? Do you have authorization for this or not? And as always with any CLI, -h parameter to learn about what parameters are available, get some documentation, etc. Especially because there's no big wikis or documentations around this. And I believe the reason is because all the basis admins are so used to using this, and that's it. Then maybe the final one, testing if it worked or not. This was also very important for the our product group that embarked on this journey anew, because they noticed that we had some fallbacks in the way the libraries was doing the certificate reads. And specifically, if SNC failed, they were falling back to the normal RFC conversions.
Yes.
So during the testing, it's like, yeah, it works, but actually it was a lie. It didn't work. It was just falling back to RFC. And how can you make sure that you actually achieved what you wanted to achieve? Has SNC being used or not? And there's like a multitude of things that you can do for this. And the first thing I suggested at the time, just break SNC name or partner name. Mistype it and see if you get errors. Then you see if the SNC communication is at least like being triggered, but still the fallback was still in place, even with this settings in here. And so one of the things we suggested at the time, let's work on port level just to be 100% sure. RFC uses 32.
Block the other ports. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, only leave the SNC port open, which is the 48 and then your system number. And by blocking 32 and 33, the fallback failed always. And this way we could really troubleshoot and find out what's going wrong, and then open up again the normal stuff. And I can recommend Frank Buchholz' ABAP Security series. He really talks about in depth about SNC capabilities. And he has a program that's published on GitHub that actually gives you a report if the connections came in with SNC, but it requires to import more stuff, and that's why we didn't do it. And he also suggests to look at the unified connectivity transactions. That's a place where you get more details on the connectivity statuses of what's coming in, and you can also allow and deny list individual RFC connections. Yeah, and so with this, you have a good toolbox of actually getting to the bottom of your SNC connection.
So, I mean, it looks fairly simple. Just execute a few commands, and then you have SNC set up in your SAP system.
Yes. So tackle all the parts, have your consumers be able to use either through JCO, NCO, or SAP means to actually supply SNC configuration. Do the trust stuff. Don't forget the username to actually be able to or allowed to talk to the PSE, the secure environment, and then figure out connectivity to your target system from those systems. So for RISE, etc., you may need to look at your VNet peering, for instance. But other than that, everything's there.
I guess, Martin, your test environment was Windows for the SAP backend and Windows for the client.
No. The SAP system doesn't have to be on. It's just this middle piece here where this self-hosted integration runtime is running.
Right.
That's
so
where
just
we
the
have
question is
system.
If you would have like client on Linux and or backend on Linux as an example.
Actually, in my test, my SAP ABAP system was running on Red Hat. And but the integration runtime, the Microsoft Salesforce integration runtime product, only runs on Windows. That's why you need AVM for this to install. And yeah, that's the reason why we were looking at Windows stuff for the command sequences. But the subgen PSE, CLI, and OpenSSL, etc., all work on Linux too. So let's say you want to do this for the SAP Cloud Connector running on a Linux machine. You could actually run the same sequence, but you need to adjust a bit the path, like syntax, and maybe some of the structures. But the approach is the same, and you can just Google for the same command, but in Linux flavor.
Right.
Or ask Copilot, translate the string to Linux.
Actually, I tried that at the very beginning, Holger, if I can just get the commands this way. But I only was able to do like 80%.
Okay.
And then I needed more blocks and more docs to actually get to the bottom of it.
Perfect. Well, cool. So it actually really doesn't look too complicated. I mean, the hints and troubleshooting section already indicates that not everything will go smoothly, I would say. But I guess if you've done it once or twice, then you know where the pitfalls are, and then yeah, hopefully with the help of this blog post, everyone is able to set this up.
Exactly, yeah. And with any integration task out there, no matter which technology, it's always comes down to those steps. You need to know, is it working? And what are the first next steps that I can do to actually progress in my testing? Because if I look at the whole thing as a whole, and I don't know where I need to start looking for problems, then basically you have a problem. And that's what the hints on troubleshooting is about. Knowing for each step where to go look.
Yeah. And I think in the blog post you also mentioned that you do recommend to start without SNC to make sure that the basic configuration is actually working.
Yes.
And then once you have that working, then go to SNC. And then I like this idea to actually disable the ports for non-SNC, and then you can really make sure that the SNC integration is actually also working.
Well, it's a bit hard to know for sure. How can you prove 100% what's working?
Well, then you can install the tool from Frank, and then you'll get some more confirmation.
True.
Well, cool. Thank you. I think that was a fantastic, not refresher, but an introduction in SNC. I definitely have to run through these commands as well and try to switch all my non-SNC communications now to SNC and see if I can make it work. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Good. With that, let's wrap it up for today. Again, Martin, thanks for jumping in. We're looking forward to seeing you again for some new fantastic topics from your side in the future. Till then, thank you and talk to you soon. Bye-bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.